Upper Volta was a country designed for one thing: cotton. Into the 80s, Voltans earned $200 a year and lived to only 44. Then a musician took power. Thomas Sankara promised something humble: 2 meals a day and water for all. In 4 short years, his government nearly doubled food production, vaccinated 2 million children, planted 10 million trees, and toppled the feudal system. Then his best friend killed him. By Upper Voltan standards, Thomas Sankara didn't grow up poor. He lived in a brick house. That privilege was relative. At school, African children were forbidden from riding bicycles or even picking fruit from trees, but European children could. People expected Sankara to become a priest. Instead, he joined the military. His instructors called him an officer of the future. On his shelves stood Marx, the Bible, and the Quran. Sankara called Upper Volta a tolerable hell, but paradise for the wealthy few. It was massively dependent on foreign goods and aid, while malnutrition, drought, and illiteracy were the norm. In Ouagadougou, he played guitar in a jazz band called Tout à coup, meaning all at once. On vocals was another young officer and friend, Blaise Compaoré. The two friends joined a clandestine circle of radical officers. They concluded Upper Volta needed revolution through development and cultural transformation for genuine independence. When Sankara entered his first post in government, he immediately stood out. While other officials drove cars few Voltans could afford, he rode a bicycle to work. Another coup made him prime minister. Sankara used the office to attack corrupt officials and businessmen, calling them hungry jackals. But he had pushed too far. Armed units surrounded Sankara's home and arrested him. But this quickly backfired, and protesting crowds shouted, "Free Sankara!" His bandmate did not wait. Blaise Compaoré mobilized 250 paratroopers, joined by armed civilians marching on Ouagadougou. They seized radio stations, gendarmerie headquarters, and occupied vital positions across the capital. Rebel civilians cut electricity and supplied intelligence. At the presidential residence, guards exchanged heavy fire with the rebels before surrendering. The president met Sankara and conceded power. A symbol of Upper Volta's dysfunction was its health system. For every 50,000 people, there was a single doctor. Children were dying from diseases for which vaccines already existed. Sankara proposed vaccinating most children against measles, meningitis, and yellow fever in only 2 weeks. Foreign agencies warned that it was too fast and ambitious, but Sankara went ahead. After a fortnight, 2 million children had been vaccinated. Sankara sometimes carried his guitar into the countryside, playing while children were inoculated. On the first anniversary of his rule, the country was reborn. The dry colonial name derived from a river became Burkina Faso, the land of the upright people. Sankara then personally composed its new anthem. But if its people remained hungry, it meant little. Burkinabe overwhelmingly lived off the land, only a tiny fraction of which was irrigated. Production of millet and sorghum had scarcely changed since independence, despite the population having grown by half. A single drought could destroy a family's harvest. Fertilizer and tractors were imported. Wells, grain reserves, dams, and irrigation were built. In the Suru Valley, a dam was constructed within months, largely through volunteer labor, bringing thousands of hectares under irrigation. Traditional chiefs, creditors, and speculators controlled access to land, so he nationalized it all. Cereal production nearly doubled. The Sahel was losing trees to unlicensed firewood merchants and bushfires. Desertification threatened agricultural gains. Sankara again turned to mass mobilization. 10 million trees were planted within 15 months. The revolution then moved into the household. Campaigns confronted circumcision, forced marriage, bride price, and polygamy. Women entered government, military, literacy programs, and producer cooperatives. Sankara cut his salary and refused air conditioning in his office. To him, public servants were exactly that, servants of the public. Every August, Sankara dissolved the cabinet and sent them to work on collective farms. Political parties were banned as representation was meant to flow through decentralized committees. Revolutionary tribunals exposed corruption, but eventually became theaters of humiliation, political punishment, and personal revenge. Dissenting teachers, trade unionists, civil servants, and opposition figures were treated as enemies of the revolution. Then an external enemy exposed another weakness. At Christmas in 1985, Mali invaded the disputed Agaché Strip. After 5 days, Mali held positions in the disputed territory. The defeat deepened tensions inside the army. To Sankara, foreign debt was colonialism by other means. Debt payments consumed an enormous share of African economies, while creditors demanded cuts to services poor populations depended on. At a summit, Sankara called for a united refusal to repay. Sankara made enemies of the most powerful: foreign creditors, traditional chiefs, land speculators, and parts of the military. There were as many enemies as achievements. A few months later, during a meeting, gunfire erupted outside. Everyone leapt to the ground. Sankara got up and walked into the courtyard, hands raised. The gunmen shot him repeatedly, entered the room, and opened fire on the others. The coup was led by Blaise Compaoré. Compaoré called the regime a rectification. Relations with the World Bank, IMF, and France were restored. Corruption, debt servicing, and austerity resumed. Services like health, education, and water were cut and public industries privatized. The music ended with Compaoré. After decades, over half of Burkinabe could not meet basic caloric needs. Sankara ruled for 4 years. National calories had risen by a quarter. There are 7 million Thomas Sankaras, he had said, but tragically, there was only one.